MPs have left Parliament Hill. They're crisscrossing the country, some on the Liberal leadership race, and we've caught up with Liberal MP Michael Ignatieff today. He's in St. John, New Brunswick. Mr. Ignatieff, before I ask you about this bizarre week in national politics, perhaps first we could touch upon the tragic news today out of Afghanistan. Your response?
I think my thoughts are with the families, and I think at a moment of grief and sorrow, they need to hear that every single Canadian, whatever party, whatever region, stands with them, stands around them to protect them, to give them a sense of comfort and solidarity at a time when they need to know their country is with them and behind them and respects their service and their sacrifice.
Every time we see something like this, we hear calls, pull them out now. Is this a time for that kind of discussion?
It's not the time for that kind of discussion, Mike. The Parliament of Canada has made its view clear. The mission will continue until 2011, and then Canadian soldiers will come home with honor.
Mr. Ignatieff, you're there in New Brunswick meeting with Paul Zed and other prominent Liberals in that part of the world. Obviously, the number one topic of conversation among people of all political parties has been this coalition idea. Bob Rae has fully embraced it, taken it to his breast. He believes, told me last night on the program, passionately that he can ride this right into the Prime Minister's office. You've had a more nuanced approach. What's your take on the differences between the two of you, if there are any, on this?
I think the important thing, Mike, is that Mr. Harper is trying to divide the Liberal Party, because he believes that if he can divide the Liberal Party, then that gives him a chance of survival. And he has to understand that he's not going to succeed in dividing the Liberal Party. The party is united in its anger, even revulsion. I use that word with care, but I mean it, at his tactics in the last week. He took a parliamentary crisis where he lost confidence he lost the confidence of the House, and he whipped it up with ill-chosen words into a crisis of national unity in which he deliberately pitted one section of the country against the other. Used one word in Quebec and another word outside of Quebec, the kind of thing that a Prime Minister simply cannot do. The job of a Prime Minister is to unite Canadians, not divide them, and he's failed that test. And he has to understand, he has to walk back down the hill.
Speaking of walking back down the hill, the buzz we're getting here on Parliament Hill today is that Stéphane Dion will step down as Liberal leader sooner than next May's leadership convention. There's talk that he'll be gone before the end of the year, and then still later you hear it'll be next week. A lot of it seems to have been prompted by that rather disastrous video and the feeling of some Liberals that if we're going to present a credible alternative to the Harper government, we need someone else in the chair.
I can't comment on that. Mr. Dion is the leader of this party as we speak. I've sworn my loyalty and allegiance to him, and I'm aware, as all Liberals are, that we've got ourselves into a parliamentary crisis caused by Mr. Harper, and at the same time we're running a leadership race, and that is causing, I think, anxiety. People want to know who's going to lead our party, and so there are discussions, there's no secret about this, to accelerate our processes. But you know, I'm one of the guys in the race. I don't get to make the rules, and the party has to come to a decision about whether or if or how it accelerates the process so that we can offer Canadians stable leadership. But it's not for me to say how and when that's going to happen, and I'm not privy to any discussions on Mr. Dion's future or anything else.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Every Liberal I meet says the sooner we get Michael Ignatieff in there, the better able we would be to present a unified front to the Governor General, because it would remove the uncertainty of who's going to be Liberal leader, all this business of a temporary fill-in person and so on. So I understand you can't talk about it, but you at least agree with me that there is a lot of buzz about that very process. What can be done to provide a permanent face at the top of the Liberal Party because that will probably be another important factor when the Governor General in late January, early February has to consider this question again. What do you think?
The party's discussing those issues, Mike, but it would be a very foolish man who entered into any speculation about this. I can't emphasize enough, leadership is a choice that the party has to make, the caucus have to make. I'm a candidate. I don't get to make the rules or decide how the decisions are made. I have to serve the party here, and I will.
I find it fascinating that Mr. Ray, has been so enthusiastic about this coalition idea at a time when the public opinion polls show that many, many, many Canadians think that it's a bad idea, not just because of the involvement of the Bloc, but because it appears to be such a stretch from traditional Liberal roots. Over the years, everybody from Lloyd Axworthy to Tom Axworthy to Tom Kent, all kinds of Liberal intellectuals have suggested divisions on the left are not a good idea. But now that we see this proposal, and given the high-profile role that Mr. Layton seems to have had in putting it all together, a lot of Liberals are saying, "Ooh, let's hold on now. We could probably win the next election on our own without making these kinds of concessions, and do it because we have the best leader to put up against Stephen Harper and the Tories."
Well, Mike, I think the thing that the Canadian people, and they're the boss here, have to understand is that the coalition agreement does not, repeat, does not jeopardize the national unity of our country. No Liberal, certainly not me, would ever sign into any agreement that jeopardized the national unity of the country, that compromised the necessary authority of the federal government, or set in train unequal treatment of provinces, that is, favoritism towards one province rather than another. These are core Liberal values that cannot be betrayed, and were not betrayed in that agreement. Similarly, on the other side, no Liberal worth his salt will ever compromise fiscal responsibility. We are in politics as Liberals to maintain a competitive business environment in which entrepreneurship is rewarded and businesses can succeed, and we cannot compromise those principles. And I believe the coalition agreement that was signed does not compromise either, and on that basis provides us with a weapon to force Stephen Harper to walk back down the hill.
How soon after a non-confidence vote do you think Canadians, would you foresee a 2-year coalition after that? I guess in the back of my mind, a lot of people are saying, why don't the Liberals just wait till May and force a general election rather than this coalition idea that has some Liberals worried about the fiscal implication. Anyway, you've given us a very strong and clear answer on that. You're not going to sell out the fiscal responsibility.
No, and Mike, I also want to make another point here. Everybody is rushing to ask me and other Liberals questions about what to do on the 26th of January. We're being asked hypotheticals. One of the reasons I'm in St. John with Paul and talking to Liberals here is to listen to Canadians. I mean, to listen to Canadians, to get out of the bubble of Ottawa, to walk down from that hill up there and listen to Canadians and take the pulse of the country, because I can't emphasize enough that the voter is the boss here, and an honorable politician listens very carefully to Canadians before making choices of this momentousness. Nobody in our party is afraid of making tough choices. No one in our party is blinking in the face of the outrageous behavior of the Prime Minister. But the right thing to do for a responsible party is to spend this time out that the Prime Minister has given us to listen, to consult among ourselves, and above all, respect the Canadian voter. I think you would agree with me, Mike, that there's never been a time in recent Canadian political history in which Canadians have been so passionately engaged with what we're trying to do in Ottawa. And this is a wonderful thing, a positive thing. Well, if it's positive, we've got to listen to what we're being told. And we're being told different things, and we have to have the courage to take clear decisions. And I have no doubt our party will take clear, decisive action.
Michael Ignatieff, thank you very much for your time tonight in beautiful St. John, New Brunswick.
Great. Thanks so much, Mike.